Hey guys, it's Mary and welcome back to Study Journey. Welcome back to the game series. This is the second episode of the Decisions game, and in the previous episode we started building and programming buttons, but in today's episode we're going to continue and actually write some code for it. Without further ado, let's get into the video. Okay, so in the previous episode, we have created these buttons and made them pop up on the screen 0. So now that we have this, what are these buttons going to go to? Well, let's say screen 1 first. So for check enter button, what should the code do if we hit the enter button? So if the enter button is pressed, which is enter button dot mouse dot presses, and then these parentheses, and then a bracket on the outside that is going to contain our code, what it will do in the middle. First, let's print out pressed to make it more clear. And then let's change the background color. So let's change the background color to, let's say, pale turquoise. And then what should the text say? So what should this text right here say? I want it to be centered the same place as this, so I'm going to go up to see where they said welcome to screen 0 and just copy this over. So work smarter, not harder. And then I'm going to copy this over. Instead of saying welcome to screen 0, I'm going to say, let's say welcome to screen 1. And we can customize whatever this says later. So whenever we hit the enter button, then this should be pressed, and we want, after it goes to the first screen, we don't want the enter button to be here anymore. So I'm going to change the position or make the enter button disappear by changing its position. So I'm going to say enter button dot POS, which stands for position, and we're going to do these curly brackets, and X is the X coordinate. I'm going to make it, let's say, negative 100, so it's off the screen, and then comma, y colon, let's also make it negative 100, so it's off the screen. And so now the enter button should no longer be on the screen. And we want the A1 button and A2 button to be visible on the screen, which is the left and the right button. So I'm going to copy the code for the A1 and A2 button, and I'm going to put it under this. So after this right here, beneath it, I'm going to paste it down here. So as we can see, we have the A1 button and then the A2 button. So now let's run the code and see if it works. We have this enter button. I'm going to press enter, and as we can see, it says welcome to screen 1, and there's a left and a right button. Okay, so that works, and now we can go on to the next thing. So now that we have this first button done, we can start doing the other ones. So as we can see, when we go press enter, we have these two buttons right here. And so underneath this, we're going to make sure we update it to the screen is now 1, because in the beginning, as we can see, the screen was set to 0, and now that we are on screen 1, I'm going to let the screen equal 1. So now that we are on screen 1, there's two buttons, the left button and then the right button. So we have to code for these buttons as well. So as we can see, if we are on screen 1, so if screen is equal to 1, then we're going to do curly brackets. If we press this button, it's going to go on to another screen, and then for press this one, it's going to display another screen. So I'm going to say if A1 button dot mouse A1 dot mouse dot presses parentheses and then the curly bracket, then we're going to print display screen 2, and then we're going to show the screen. So how we show the screen, it is basically like the one above. So we're going to have a background, and it's going to have some text on it. So let's make the color, instead of pale turquoise, let's make it, let's say, pale green. And then the text is going to say welcome to screen 2, and it's still the same position. But now the enter button is no longer on the screen anyways, but what we do see is from screen 1 there's the A1 button and the A2 button. When we go on to the next screen, we don't want these buttons here anymore. So just like we hid the enter button right here with the negative coordinates, we're going to do the same with the A1 button and the A2 button. So we're going to do A1 button dot POS, and it's going to be equal to the x coordinate being, for example, negative 100, and then the y coordinate being negative 100. And then we can do the same for the A2 button. And so now the A1 and A2 buttons are not here anymore. So let's run it and see what happens. We enter welcome to screen 1. So if we click this, we go to screen 2. Now this is if the left button is pressed. So now the left button is pressed, we can do the same basically with the A1 and A2 buttons and add more buttons onto this screen. So let's say we want some buttons on here. Instead of making it A1 button and A2 button, well, maybe we can make it the B1 and B2 buttons that we have in the variables above. So right here when we set up the A1, A2 button, let's let B1 button be new sprite, and see how we have these buttons right now. As we can see, because they're defined and they have what's in length, they're going to show up on the screen. But we don't want the A1 and A2 buttons. As we can see if we run it, these are the A1 and A2 buttons, and then here's the B1 button that I haven't coded yet. But these buttons we do not want to show up on the screen. So how can we do this? Well, just like we did with the coordinate plane, we can make it negative. So let's say this is going to be negative 100, negative 100. And instead of these being actual numbers, let's let it be, for example, negative 50 and negative 50, or let's say negative 200, negative 200. And I'm going to also do the same with the B2 button. Let's let it be negative 150, negative 150. And if we click run, as we can see now on the home screen, there's only the enter button. And when we call these buttons, that's when it's going to show up, when we make the coordinate plane a new place. So going back down to our when the A1 button is pressed, when the A1 button is pressed, we can basically add the B1 and B2 buttons. So I'm going to call it add B1 button. And just like we did with the previous buttons, I'm going to copy this down. And I'm just going to change it to B1. And instead of calling it left, I'm going to call it, let's say, B1 for now. And as we know, we don't have the positions of these new buttons yet, because right now they're just some negative coordinate plane. And if we hit enter, welcome to screen 1, the buttons are not here because we redid them to negative coordinates. So how we rename them, so let's go up to A1 and A2 for now. So above, right below the add A1 button comment, let's make the A1 button have an actual position. So A1 button dot POS, so what should the position be? Well, we can let it be the X just be the width divided by 2 minus 50, and then Y can just be the height divided by 2, let's say plus 100. And then we can do the same for A2, so A2 button dot position is going to be the curly bracket with X, coordinate being width divided by 2. Let's say instead of minus 50, let's do plus 50. And then the Y coordinate can be the height divided by 2 plus 100. Okay, now let's run it. So when we press the enter button, here is the screen 1 with these two buttons that are now visible. So now that we hit left, we see we have already created this button, but it's not showing up. So B1 button dot position, let's make the position visible. And we can just make it the same place as the A1 button. So I'm just going to copy the A1 button position over. And then when we run it, this button is now visible. And we can basically just copy the same thing over for B2. So add B2 button, and I'm going to change all of the B1s to 2s. And for the button, instead of the width subtracting 50, let's do add 50. And I'm going to call the button B2. So enter left, and here's the B1 and B2 buttons. So now we have just created not only the first screen, but also the screen after, or screen 2. So in the next episode, we're going to be continuing creating other screens and making our program work.